Good morning. We've got a fair bit to cover this morning, so we're not going to stand ceremony. We're going to get straight into things and get cracking. So, first place to start, Euro Yen. We've seen quite a large push overnight. This will pull back at some point. This is unsustainable. This has come as a result of yen fundamentals more than anything else. There isn't particularly euro strength this morning as I've seen so far, but there was preliminary yen GDP data out last night that was worse than expected. So as a result, obviously we are seeing a little bit of weakness surrounding the yen. That is what is driving this push to the upside. Now, if we come out and just have a little look at where we may potentially be heading, we can take this out quickly, put this in here, and just pull that back through. Then I just want to bring that into these previous lows. Also, just come a little bit higher there. It's difficult because obviously we've zoomed right out, but we are firing into a previous area that we would have used as support. Therefore, we can expect to see a little bit of resistance found at this zone. If not, then obviously we are going to fire back up to 129.30. With that in mind, obviously, if we can get back above 128, then we look to take the long. However, I would prefer to see the pullback on the lower time frames before we saw that kind of a scenario and that situation occur. So a move back here from here down to 127.20 or 127, somewhere around this region. Once we've found that, then obviously a rejection and we can look to take the long back up. But until that happens, I wouldn't want to get involved in a position now. The pair has moved 50 pips overnight, or even more to be fair, 80 pips overnight, and that's a big old movement. If we come out and have a look at like an average day for the pair, the average daily trading range is around 90 pips, which means that if we were to use that as an example, the pair has already done its average daily. Therefore, anything that happens now isn't going to go much higher than what we've already seen. So it makes sense that 127.80 becomes resistance. And then we just see the price flit around and float around this area for pretty much most of the day. Little pullbacks here and there. Not expecting miracles with this pair at the moment at all. Obviously, if anyone caught it from 127 up, then fantastic, well done. However, as we can see, the push was fundamentally driven, and I would very much expect to see it pull back at some point this morning. Probably by around about 10 o'clock, I would expect price to be somewhere around about 127.50, but we shall wait that one out and see. Euro Oz. I've just closed out of a couple of Euro Oz shorts that I had in play. Price has started to swing. I would expect the drive back to the upside. We saw price last night gap ever so slightly. If we come back in, we saw price gap a little bit last night, push back to the upside, and then obviously price has just dropped off. That push came and retested that previous area of consolidation and breakout that we had seen here on Friday. We had then obviously pushed back down, got that double bar formation, that kind of tweezers formation. So we would have been able to take another entry last night, but didn't really make a difference to any of the entries that we were already in, or that I was already in, should I say. And then we've come back down and seen that swing. We're failing to break the lows, which means that a higher low is probably the likely scenario here. which means that a push back up is quite likely. A push back into 156.20 to begin with, and then obviously I would imagine somewhere around about 126.50. From 126.50, that's where I would be looking to take potential short away from, or obviously start looking for a potential long above 56.70 or 56.80. So we've got quite a few potentials. Obviously we can't rule out a short. Either we can get a short away from 156.50, that would be lovely, to ride back down to the 80 level. Just want to come right out so that you can see why we're using this 80 level. So we can see all the support that this level has played quite a few times previously. Again, run through here, support, and that's where we're trading around at the moment. So we need to get below that level. But as we can see when we come to the left, anything below that level, we've got a slight little bit at 55.20. We'll be nicely in profit by that point. But after that, we should see a pretty decent drive into 153.50. And therefore, obviously, an amazing risk to reward on the pair should that come into play. So I just want to drop that back down quickly. Just keep an eye on it. But yeah, a pop back above 156 basically confirms the long. Back to 20 or 50. US dollar CAD. We obviously have spoken quite a lot about this over the last couple of weeks. We've seen a new swing form and we are seeing another one form at the moment. I would very much anticipate seeing price come back. Again, we gapped last night, closed that gap, push back to the downside, finding some support around this same region that we saw last time at 26.60. I would imagine that's going to drive price back into 80, and then we shall go from there. As we pull the charts out, obviously the time frames out, we can see that we've got that support there. Once we get back below that, we should see a drop into 126, somewhere around this region, 126.10. From there, obviously, 126 is that last hurdle to get below, and before we shall see, I would imagine that 124.50 target that we have been harping on about for ages found, like I say, a little bit around 25.50. That's fine. By the time we get through here, we'd be nicely in profit. We can either just take our profit off the table or eliminate the risk from the position. However, like I say, a push into 124.50 does look highly probable at this point in time. We do just need to get back below these lows and through this region at 60 and then again at 126. So breaks back below 60 will give us a continuation short entry. More than happy to take that. Or obviously it pushes away from 80 will give us a short entry. Anything that breaks back above 127.10, 127.20, then obviously it may invalidate the position. We may need to look then for potential longs above 27.50 or even 27.80, depending on the momentum as we approach these levels. But for the time being, for all the time that we are trading below 127, the shorts have to be the favourable option. They have to be where our attention is focused. Aussie yen, as I say, we have seen a breakout to the upside. We were just kind of chilling in this area with a breakout above 81.60 being the preferred option for the pair. The Aussie dollar, as we've seen with euro, Oz has been relatively strong, and we have seen that the yen has taken a pounding overnight. So as I say, we've seen price push up off the back of those fundamentals. We see a pullback now into the 60 region, but anywhere around 70 and 60. From there, obviously, we will see how price responds. If we break back any lower, come down to say like 81.50, probably look to take a short down to 80.50. If we reject from 60 or even 70, then we will look to take the long positions back up. If we just pull the chart out, long position up, back up to 84. Now, we're not going to get there completely uninterrupted. If I remember rightly, looking at the charts yesterday, we have a few little areas, but mostly around about 182.80, 183. So somewhere around that region, we are likely to see a sticking point come into play. By that point, obviously, we will be again nicely in profit, so we can eliminate the risk from the position, see how things progress, or even just take our profit off the table together. It will be a decent return, as we will need a relatively small stop loss for the pair. If we can get involved around about 120, 81.70, then I would imagine that 81.50 or 45 could act as our stop loss, and therefore on a where you'd be looking at around about 8 to 1, 9 to 1. Let's just play in. Let's say that we do get entry from 70. Put a stop loss in at 45. So 25 pips stop loss. Take profit at even at 80. It's going to give us a 4 to 1 at 84. Gives us our 9 to 1, as I say, and that brings us in before the support. That brings us in before the region, so we're not just relying. Obviously, there's a higher drive, the extra 50 pips that we will have on the table also take us to about 10, 11 to 1. So we shall see how we play out. It all depends on that retracement. If that retracement is actually really quite powerful and strong, then there is no reason that we couldn't see that find the bottom of range low again, just come back inside this range, and we end up in a range trade situation. So don't get focused on the longs just because it's a high risk to reward position. I'm on a high potential return. When we are looking at situations like this, obviously we still have this 80 region to be mindful of. EURCAD, similar to $CAD, we've started to see a swing form. We've now had an engulfing formation. As I say, the yen, this euro-yen position isn't because of euro strength. The euro isn't strong at all. We are seeing more and more weakness come into the pair. Now, I don't want to particularly take a position until 53.50 goes. Yes, we've seen the engulfing from the high here, but there is zero reason now until these lows are actually broken through that we're going to be odds on to get back up to the highs, back down to the lows even. From this point of view, if we fail to break these lows, then in actual fact the tension will turn from 153.90, and we'll look for longs back up to 54. Like 54.50, somewhere around this region. If we can get back below the lows, even if we can see like a weak close now, then it might be worth taking a slightly earlier entry, but we're certainly targeting back at the 153.20. Back below this level, back below our support, that's kind of our last ditch support region now, until we hit into 152.20 and find this previous support through here. So simply just that level system coming back down through the time frames there. So we shall have to wait and see and keep an eye on how things progress with that. But as things stand, I'm pretty comfortable with remaining to look at the potential shorts. It makes the most sense at the moment, I feel. So we will just have to keep an eye and see how things progress with that for the time being. What else do we want to look at? Euro New Zealand. Euro New Zealand, you can see, or we can see, that we are now floating around the support region that we have in play at 57.50. Where we go from here is going to be largely dependent on this level. If we reject from this level, obviously range trading it back up to 50 at 68.50 makes a lot of sense. If we can break back below this, then firing into 166.70, then 166.20 makes a lot of sense for Euro New Zealand. So we're floating around this little level at the moment. I'm in a couple of positions on this. I will look to be taking my risk off the table with those shortly. I don't want to be involved for too much longer than I particularly need to be on the pair, given the fact that we are sitting around such a support region. Also, with that in mind, obviously, we have seen a lot of euro weakness this morning, which would lead that anticipation into potentially finding some support in the near future to see some form of price drive back to the upside. Pound New Zealand, just seen that double bar formation. We've broken back inside of 192 and 190. I'm just going to actually bring this level up at the moment. We've broken back inside. We could see a retest of around 192. There's not particular pros and cons to either side of this position at the moment, but I can definitely see a pullback into 190, 120, or even as low as 191 itself coming into play. A pullback into those regions make quite a lot of sense for a potential higher low before then seeing a further drive to the upside. If we can get back below 91 this week, then I do believe we will find 89 and drop off significantly. There's not tons and tons in the way of fundamentals. Certainly not today. There's a bank holiday in the US, so we'll probably see some light liquidity through the afternoon. I believe, though, it's not until monetary policy meeting for the Aussie dollar Tuesday morning or Monday night. But for the pound, I don't think there's anything until PMI on Friday. So with that in mind, obviously, we could end up seeing the vast majority of moves coming from potential pullbacks or potential situations surrounding the corona vaccine, and if there's possible drops in the corona numbers. I do believe next week that the pound are due to outline their kind of strategy for getting out of lockdown, so that will be quite an interesting one to see. So that's worth keeping an eye on too. But yeah, certainly for the time being, we shall see how we progress through these positions and see what we have going on. Let's just do the customary flick through gold as well. You can see I haven't really analysed gold for a little while. Let's just come to the 4 hours. Really like that level. I think all we're seeing here is just consolidation. Given the dollar CAD kind of precarious nature, I would envision that the longs are probably the most likely scenario for gold at the moment. Certainly starting to see that the beginnings and remnants of a fresh trend line. I think a break back above is probably occurring of previous 4-hour trend line 2, higher low forming. So we would need to get back above the highs. I think if we see a break back above 1828, then we are very much likely to see 1863 found. That's obviously a very decent size position. And then from there, we will see how price pushes up further than that. But yeah, apart from that, it's going to be a morning of just seeing how positions move on their own, and then obviously we will go from there. Try and work out some directional bias as we move into the day. However, I think with the low liquidity from the US bank holiday, we could see things a little bit stagnant this morning. Some possible erratic moves as we go into this afternoon and further into this evening. But things should settle down overnight and as we go into tomorrow. So a little bit of patience is probably required just to see how things progress. But I hope everyone has a decent day, whatever it is you're up to, whatever it is you're doing. And I will catch up with people later